What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Stochastic channel, and today we're talking some college football DFS ahead of the Week 9 Friday slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. And before we go further, kind of the deal of a lifetime, and I'm not kidding. We have this insane deal right now with most of our partners where you can get access to our Sims core package for free. All you have to do is go to this link join page. It'll be linked below. You can also just go to Stochastic and click the deals page and you'll see the get Sims for free. And basically any of these partners, if you click the claim offer, sign up, you are going to get 1 free month of the Sims. You can pick what package you want, what sport, and that's it. It's really that easy. You can stack these, so you can do more than one if you are not on a couple of these. And all you have to do is click the claim offer. A lot of them are giving you extra money. Bet365, for example, is giving you $200 in bonus bets for your first $5 bet. Could be any side or total. And then as long as you email our support with a screenshot, you are going to get those Sims 1 month for free just by signing up with one of our partners. This won't be around forever, and frankly, I'm surprised it's around at all. So take advantage of that. I'm going to show you some of our college football stuff. So I'll remove the little behind the glass and then bring a new one up as I fumble through the tech of this. But anyway, it's a 3-game slate. And I guess before we get started, my apologies for last week. It was a very busy week for me. And now we're back. Here's one thing that's offered with the college football package. It's our data usage tool. This is in addition to all of the Sims, projections, ownership, and everything. And we have a 3-game slate on our hands this Friday, and it's an awesome one. 3 elite games. It kicks off with Louisville taking on Boston College. Louisville is a 7.5-point favorite. The total in this game is 53 points. Pace isn't great. Both teams below average, 83 for Louisville, Boston College 99. But we have a lot of explosive playability, especially on the Louisville side. They're currently passing 55% of the time. Boston College at 41.5. So with Louisville, you've got Tyler Shugg. I think 8,100 is a fair price tag for him. His O-line has been getting him killed at times, which is potentially a problem against Boston College. They have an elite pass rusher, Iziraku. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Excuse me if I'm not. But Louisville lost their left tackle. That's contributed to some of the negative rushing yards. But Shugg does have mobility. We've seen it through his 6-year career. He's only gotten 1 design attempt each of the last 2 weeks. So it's definitely a concern, but I don't think he generally finishes with negative rushing yards. Just want to throw that out there. And then as a passer, he's averaging 288 per game. Boston College's defense definitely doesn't scare you through the air. So right away, Shugg stacks are always going to be live. The backfield is a committee. It is what it is. Isaac Brown leads it, and I think he is appropriately priced here. He's been super efficient, and there's no reason to take him off the field at this point. But you will see a couple carries for Don Chaney. Keywan Brown gets a carry here and there. Duke Watson has 10 carries over the last 2 games. And Maurice Turner was allegedly available in a case of emergency last game. He's been coming off the injury. So it's not the locked-in role you love for running back. There's definitely a couple others on this slate that have better roles. But Isaac Brown, I think, is firmly in play. At receiver, the big thing, Colin Lacey, he's played 4 games. He decided to take his red shirt. So he's out of the picture now, which leaves pretty clearly Ja'Cory Brooks as the 1. Chris Bell is the 2. He's severely underpriced at 3,900. And then Amari Huggins-Bruce should fill in as the 3, I would presume. He's been pretty efficient over the last couple games. He's only 3,500. So cheap Louisville stacks are certainly in play. Jamari Johnson got hurt. I don't think that really matters for anything. He's just going to be potentially replaced by Mark Redmond. I think we'll see a couple other guys get some snaps, but that's at least worth mentioning. Perhaps Redmond is in play here. And if you do see like a wide receiver 4 or something emerge, I think it's Qataris Hicks. Watch this. Antonio Meeks might return. So this is dicey. I don't think it really matters. We've already gone through their top 3. It's pretty clearly Huggins, Bruce, Chris Bell, and maybe some Mark Redmond for this team. But I definitely think Louisville stacks firmly in play. Boston College has been a weird team. They've shown upside at points and then taken their foot off the gas a couple times and blown games. It's been tricky to see. Louisville has a poor secondary so far this year. They have battled some injuries, so perhaps they're a little better than what we've seen. Castellanos has some pretty good efficiency stats. They're just not asking him to throw very often. Only 21 attempts per game is a disaster. And his rushing output is way lower than previous years. 161 on the ground. He has taken 15 sacks, which is shocking because the O-line has been very good this year. I don't know. It's hard to actually evaluate him. I will say he had an injury, so we see the game he missed. Then only 6 carries after that. Seeing him jump back up to 16 design carries leaves me with some optimism for him on the ground. I think he's run about as bad as you can because of the injury in his rushing output. If you want to play that angle, I think he's fine for GPPs. Straight up, I'd rather have Shug price adjusted, but I think Castellanos is in play. The backfield's just full three-way committee now. They're involving Turbo Richards in addition to Robichaud and Ward. Richards is 3,700. You could go there. I think it's riskier than like the Louisville receivers or something like that, but man, this has devolved into a very difficult situation. At wide receiver, I think it is pretty clearly Lewis Bond or Jaden Skeet. Bond has at least 8 targets in 4 straight games. Skeet has been somewhat productive too, but he's definitely fallen behind Bond. Bond's at 54 yards per game. He's the player I'd like to get to if you can play one. I've been playing a lot of Bond this year. And there's not really that much else behind him. Kamari Morales and Reed Harris play quite a bit. Both are around 50%. They use 12 personnel more than most teams. Franklin was at 31% of the routes. That kind of renders a wide receiver 3 useless. Jaron Bradley leads that group. He's at about a 40% route share. So outside of these two, it is pretty dicey to get to BC pass catchers. Luckily, Skeet's 37 and Bond is affordable at 55. Second game up, we go to Boise State, UNLV. Let's see if I can't make this bigger. I think someone mentioned this before. That didn't work. Oh, well. Let me try one more thing. On this page. How's that? Yeah, it's a little better. We'll just leave it. All right, so Boise State takes on UNLV. This is a 3-point spread in favor of Boise State on the road. 64 total. It's come down. It's still really high. Pace is average. Boise 72nd. UNLV 76th. Pass rates are low for both these teams. Boise 45%. UNLV 35%. Maddox Madsen has been pretty bad this year. He's not efficient, and he's only averaging 211 through the air. I'd like to find my way to Castellanos or just play someone else. I think there's a real, unless they get smoked in this game, I don't think they really want to use him. And it makes sense when you have a certain Ashton Genty on your team. Madsen also doesn't run. So there's little upside outside of very specific game scripts, in my opinion. And Genty, this is the highest price I've ever seen on a main slate. 1,200 for Genty. But I think there's ways you can get there. We just mentioned 3 or 4 players that are sub 4K you can use to get to Genty. His props are 193.5 rushing yards. He's averaging 208 per game. They haven't thrown much, but when they are throwing, his route rate is awesome. He's like never coming off the field. Almost 60%, and that's just with a couple of games he didn't even play the whole time because they were killing teams. Like he's at 70, 80% in some games. Genty, there's nothing bad you can say about him. It just comes down to roster construction. Do you prioritize him and play a couple values, or do you play a more mid-range build? I think you can get to Genty 2 QBs and just play cheap receivers, which is, I think, what I'm going to do. And one way you can do that is play Camper. He's 4,900. He's the wide receiver 1 on this team, averaging 6.2 targets per game and 73.5 yards. They're favored, but there's a chance they have to throw more. So Cam Camper is firmly in play. His route share is locked in. The rest of Boise is a little dicey. You know, Matt Lauder, their tight end, he has not eclipsed 70% of the routes in 2 straight games. He's never been above 80, but he's still up there. Latrell Caples did deal with an injury, but he did jump back to 86% of the routes in their last game. And then Prince Strahan, he's been at 65% pretty consistently over the last 4. That's about it. I don't think I'm considering anyone else. So Camper's fine. I think Caples at 36 is another guy you can get to. Wish he was more targeted, but perhaps the injury had something to do with that. And then Prince Strahan at 33. Completely fine. Any of the Boise guys below 4K. And that's another path to getting up to Genty. Tons of sub 4K guys in play. On the UNLV side, they're facing a Boise run defense, which, you know, despite allowing 2.9 yards per carry, that's because of opponents they faced. Efficiency-wise, they're actually outside the top 100 in run defense. Haj Malik Williams is averaging 167.5 passing yards per game, a little depressed because of appearances in games where Sluka was still there. And he already has 390 rushing yards. This guy is an absolute monster on the ground, and Boise provides little resistance. I'm completely fine playing some combination of like a Shug, Haj Malik, and Genty and punting off the rest. or maybe a Castellanos, Hajj Malik, Genty punting off the rest, something like that I think is fine. At running back, they have trimmed the fat a little bit. Greg Burrell has not been seen recently, 2 straight games, and Devin Green has sort of hit the bench, which has allowed this to consolidate between Kylan James and Jaden Thomas. And between the two, I prefer Jaden Thomas. 5,800 is not a price tag I'm in love with, but he still has carried the ball 17 and 14 times over the last 2 games. Kylan James is at 13 and 9, so it certainly is consolidated. They rarely throw to running backs, which is a problem, especially if they're down in games. They'll have them pass block a lot of times, but in play, not preferred plays. Ricky White, I think, is a casualty of the slate. He's very expensive, and I would just rather play Genty. For reference, Ricky White at 8,700, he's averaging 86 yards per game. His targets have finally jumped to 11.3 per game in the last 4 compared to 9.4 in the year. And a lot of this has coincided with Hajj Malik Williams just targeting him incessantly. I think he's fine if you can get there. I have no problem with it, but I would prefer trying to prioritize Genty. Jacob DeJesus, he'll get some carries in the backfield. 4 targets per game over the last 4, 3.4 in the year. He's a little too expensive for my liking. I'd rather just punt it off. And then everyone else is rotating, so it's pretty tricky to get to anyone. Khalil Bolingay is at 3,400. He plays a decent amount, but I would rather just play someone else who's more involved, like Caples or, a Skeet, something like that. Going to our last game, Rutgers takes on USC. This is the one that is closest to a blowout. 14-point spread in favor of USC, 56 total. Rutgers has to go across the country on a short week. They're 70th in pace with a 45.5% pass rate. USC is 61st in pace, passing 61.5% of the time. Ethan Kaliak-Manis is doing very little. His rushing output, 126 yards. Honestly, better than I thought, but still not very good. And then he's only averaging 191 yards per game through the air. And that's partially because this team would love to just slam Monangai into the back of the offensive line as many times as they can. USC's run defense is not very good, but this is a spot where you'd think they'd be able to dedicate extra resources to it. We know exactly what Rutgers wants to do. Monangai is averaging 23.1 touches per game, 121 rushing yards, and he is the preferred pass-catching back. Not very involved there. They just don't throw to their backs a lot. But we've also removed Sam Brown from the offense. He is not playing he's out. So with Antoine Raymond, they're just less likely to play a backup. Those are the only 3 backs that have gotten touches, and Sam Brown's out. So Monangai, he's in play. Again, prefer Genty if you need to pick one. But I think, honestly, you can go really whatever 2 quarterbacks you want. Genty, 1 decent running back, and then punt the rest off. I'm less likely to punt with Rutgers skill position players outside of Monangai. Demir Miller's too expensive, in my opinion, at 4K, which is wild to say. But nobody on this team averages more than 38 yards per game outside of Demir Miller. He's the only one that's playing every single snap right now. Their top 2 tight ends, Kenny Fletcher and Konopka, got hurt, and they've rotated their backups, which is interesting to see. I'm not sure why or what the goal is here. They both kind of stink. We're talking Mike Higgins and Logan Blake. And then the receivers have turned into a nasty timeshare too, like Ian Strong, 37% of the routes last game. Chris Long, 23%. Christian Dremel, who'd been hurt most of the years back now, he went from 15% up to 57%. And then players like Ben Black and KJ Duff were at 40% and 51% of the routes. It appears this has just evolved into a pretty nasty rotation, and the only player that is a locked-in safe option is Demir Miller, which leads to a lot of pause for me. On USC, Miller Moss, negative 30 rushing yards. USC should find a more favorable matchup here. Rutgers defense is very hurt. Their top 2 edges are out. And Miller Moss has been good against weaker opponents. Just you hope he doesn't take as many sacks. He's only scrambled once, which is wild. And he's taken 9 sacks. But he's averaging 278 through the air on 41 attempts. In weaker matchups like this, there's a decent chance he 300-yard bonuses. The team total is 35 points, and the total in the game is surprisingly high. No problem playing Moss. Woody Marks is an awesome play. I think I prefer Woody Marks to Monangai, just based on the pass catching. It's 21.4 attempts for Marks per game. Monangai's at 23.1. But Marks is averaging 4.5 targets per game, 26.5 receiving yards. Monangai is at 5 yards. So, I mean, that's a huge difference. And it makes up for the difference in volume just with more of Marks coming in the pass game. Receivers really hard for this team. Everyone's healthy, so they have completely devolved. And I don't think you see anyone consistently above 65% of the routes. Game by game, someone will probably pop above it. But last game, Zachariah Branch, 65%, Jacoby Lane, 67, Kyron Hudson, 67, Deuce Robinson, 29, Mekhi Lemon, 68, Lake McCree, 47 in his first game off injury, Kyle Ford, 31. Don't know why we need Kyle Ford on the field. Jay Fair, 6%. They're just rotating so many guys, and nobody has a locked-in target share. If anything, I think Kyron Hudson and Jacoby Lane are the most interesting, even Mekhi Lemon. Zachariah Branch has not commanded more than 6 targets in any game over the last 4 games. He's averaging 5.3 targets in that span. That's behind Jacoby Lane, Kyron Hudson, Deuce Robinson, and Mekhi Lemon. And Lake McCree only played 1 game. He had 5 targets immediately. I mean, you could throw darts here, but this is pretty difficult. I think Lake McCree honestly might be the best. He was playing a fair amount before he got injured. His routes prior to the injury, week 1, he was at 67%. It's actually not as good as I thought. Then 38, then 20, 29. That was the game he got hurt, though. Sometimes we see USC use more tight ends, sometimes we don't. So difficult to parse USC, and they're all a little expensive. I'd rather play the locked-in players at cheaper prices on Louisville and Boston College. But that'll do it for the slate. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back tomorrow with the hour monologue. Again, apologies for missing it last week. Until then, good luck. We will see you later.